My youngest son stole his older brother's girlfriend. Now the entire family disowned him, and she left him when he had no money and no family support left. I'm 55 years old. I've been working in financial consulting for almost 3 decades now, and I never thought that at this age I would have to deal with the kind of family drama that destroys entire lives. But here I am, trying to process how my family disintegrated in a matter of months because of decisions I still can't fully understand. My wife, Catherine, and I raised our 2 sons, Benjamin and Lucas, with all the values we thought were important, honesty, loyalty, respect for others, the kind of things you assume your kids are going to internalize just because they live them at home every day. Benjamin is 28 now, Lucas is 25, and for most of their lives they were normal brothers, with their occasional fights when they were kids, but nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing that indicated either of them would be capable of betraying the other in the most devastating way possible. Benjamin was always the son who seemed to have it all figured out. Like from high school, he already knew what he wanted to study. He went to a university in another state for engineering. He was responsible, called home regularly, brought home good grades. Everything a parent expects, I guess. Lucas was different, more carefree, more spontaneous. He changed majors like 3 times before finally settling on graphic design. And honestly, Catherine and I were always a bit more protective of him because he was the youngest. That typical dynamic where the youngest son gets away with things more easily. Looking back, I think that maybe contributed to what happened later. I don't know. The truth is, I'm still trying to understand how we got here. Benjamin met Megan in his sophomore year of college. She was studying communications at the same institution, and the first time he brought her home for Thanksgiving was like 6 years ago. Something like that. She was pleasant, very conversational. The kind of girl who easily integrates into family dynamics. She helped Catherine in the kitchen, got along well with Lucas. My parents adored her. They were together for over 4 years, and during all that time we saw them maybe 2 or 3 times a year because they lived several hours away. But every time they came, you could tell they were a solid couple. They had those future plans that young couples make. They talked about moving in together after graduating, eventually getting married, all that. Catherine was convinced that Megan was going to be our daughter-in-law. You know how mothers are. She was already mentally planning the wedding and thinking about grandchildren and all that stuff. Lucas graduated like a year and a half after Benjamin, and during that time Benjamin and Megan were already living together in a small apartment near where Benjamin had gotten his first job as an engineer. Things seemed to be going well for them according to what they told us over the phone. Lucas got a job at a design agency in another city, not that far but not close either, and started his adult life independently. The brothers didn't see each other much during that period, which was normal. They were both busy establishing their careers, building their lives, but they texted each other, talked occasionally. There was no sign of problems between them, or so we thought. About a year and a half ago, Benjamin called us one night, and he sounded weird. His voice sounded kind of flat, and he told us that he and Megan had broken up. Catherine immediately went into worried mom mode, asking what had happened, if he was okay, if he needed anything. And Benjamin just said that Megan had been unfaithful, that he had discovered messages on her phone, that he could no longer trust her, and that he had decided to end the relationship. We were devastated for him. Obviously, 4 years is a long time, and when you invest that much in a relationship and it ends that way, it's brutally painful. We asked him who the other guy was, if we knew him, but Benjamin became evasive and I said it didn't matter, that he preferred not to talk about those details, that he just needed time to process everything. We offered for him to come home for a few days, to take a break from work if necessary, but he said he preferred to keep busy. That work helped him not think so much about the whole thing. During the following weeks, we talked to Benjamin several times. He never mentioned the other man specifically, and we respected his space and didn't push because it seemed like he just wanted to turn the page and move forward. Lucas called us around that same time asking how his brother was, saying he had tried to talk to him but that Benjamin wasn't responding much, and we told him the basics, that he had broken up with Megan, that he was going through a difficult time but that he would be okay eventually. Lucas said something like, "Oh, that's too bad. I hope he's okay. Send him my regards." And that was basically the whole conversation, nothing that made us suspect anything at all. About 2 months passed after the breakup. It was a Friday afternoon, I think, when Lucas called us saying he would come visit us over the weekend and that he would bring someone he wanted to introduce us to. Catherine got excited, thinking maybe he had met a girl and that we were finally going to meet someone important in his life, because Lucas had never been one to have serious relationships. They were always casual things that never went anywhere. He told us they would arrive Saturday afternoon, so Catherine went into hostess mode, preparing food, cleaning the guest house where they would stay. All that preparation she does when important visitors come. Saturday, they arrived around 3 in the afternoon. We heard the car in the driveway and went out to receive them like we always do. And when I saw who was getting out of the passenger side, I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. It was Megan, Benjamin's ex. Megan, getting out of Lucas's car with a smile on her face, like nothing, like this was completely normal and acceptable. Catherine froze next to me. I could literally feel the tension emanating from her, and Lucas was walking toward us with this expression between nervous and defiant, holding Megan's hand, and before we could say anything, he blurted out, "I know this is probably a surprise, but Megan and I are together now. We've been officially dating for 2 months, and we wanted you to know because we're getting married." Honestly, I don't remember exactly what I said in that moment. I think something like, "What the hell is going on here?" or something like that. But Catherine was more direct and asked Lucas if he was joking, if he really thought this was appropriate, and Lucas started with this defense of, "Look, I know it's complicated, but you can't choose who you fall in love with. These things happen. Benjamin has already gotten over it, and we need you to do the same." Megan was standing there, not saying much, just holding Lucas's hand, and I couldn't stop thinking about all the time she had been in our house, all the meals she had shared with us, all the conversations where she talked about her future with Benjamin. And now she was there with his younger brother acting like everything was perfect. I told them we needed to talk privately, that Megan should wait in the car or take a walk or something because this was a family conversation. And Lucas got defensive, saying that Megan was part of his life now and that he wasn't going to exclude her. But Megan intervened, saying it was okay, that she understood they needed to talk, and she went to walk around the neighborhood. Once we were alone, Catherine exploded. She yelled at Lucas, asking how he could do this to his brother, how he could have even looked at Benjamin's girlfriend that way. And Lucas started saying that things weren't as simple as they seemed, that his relationship with Megan had arisen naturally after Benjamin, and she broke up, that they hadn't planned to fall in love, but that it happened. I tried to stay calm and asked him directly when all this had started, because 2 months of official dating didn't explain how they were already serious enough to be talking about marriage. And Lucas got uncomfortable, started stammering something about timing and connection, and it was at that moment when I started connecting the dots. I asked him if something had happened between them before Benjamin and Megan broke up, and the way he went quiet, the way he couldn't hold my gaze, gave me the answer. Catherine put her hands to her face and started crying, and I felt this fury growing in my chest because the betrayal wasn't just Megan cheating on Benjamin. It was Lucas, his own brother, the younger brother that Benjamin had always looked after and supported, being the person he had been betrayed with. Lucas tried to justify himself, saying he hadn't intended to hurt anyone, that things with Megan had started as friendship, that they supported each other. When Benjamin was very busy with work, that they spent time together, and eventually feelings developed. This whole narrative that sounded like he was trying to convince himself he hadn't done anything wrong. I asked him if Benjamin knew that he was the other man, the one who had destroyed his 4-year relationship, and Lucas admitted that Benjamin had eventually found out, that they had had a terrible conversation where Benjamin basically told him he never wanted to speak to him again, that he considered him dead to him, and that since then they hadn't spoken at all. Catherine asked him how he could live with himself, knowing the pain he had caused his brother, and Lucas got defensive again, saying that Benjamin would eventually get over it, that people fall in and out of love all the time, that he couldn't sacrifice his own happiness just because Benjamin was hurt. I tried to explain to him that this wasn't simply a normal breakup, that he had betrayed the most fundamental trust that exists between brothers, that he had crossed a line that can't be uncrossed, but he kept insisting that we had to understand his perspective, that he hadn't planned to fall in love with Megan, but now that it had happened, he needed his family to support him. We told him that we absolutely were not going to support this relationship, that we were not going to attend any wedding, that he needed to seriously reconsider what he was doing. And Lucas got angry, saying we were being unfair, that we were choosing Benjamin over him, that he thought that as his parents, we would want to see him happy no matter what. Catherine told him that, of course, we wanted to see him happy, but not at the cost of destroying his brother, not building his happiness on the ruins of Benjamin's relationship, and that if he couldn't understand that, then we had a much bigger problem of values and character. Megan came back from her walk, and Lucas told her they were leaving, that they obviously weren't welcome, and before they left, I told Lucas he needed to call Benjamin, that I needed to hear his version of this whole story, and Lucas told me to do whatever I wanted, but that his decision was already made, that he was going to marry Megan, and that he hoped we could eventually accept it. They left, and Catherine and I stood there in the driveway, not knowing what to do, feeling completely shattered, because somehow in the course of a few hours, we had learned that we had one son capable of betraying his brother in the worst possible way, and another son who had been suffering in silence without telling us the complete truth about what had happened to him. That night, I called Benjamin and told him what had happened, that Lucas had shown up with Megan announcing their engagement, and Benjamin was quiet for a moment before saying he already knew this was going to happen eventually. I asked him why he hadn't told us that Lucas was the one who had the affair with Megan, and Benjamin explained that when he found out, he was so devastated, so embarrassed and furious, that he simply couldn't bring himself to tell us. That part of him hoped that by keeping it secret, maybe Lucas would come to his senses and end things with Megan. But that obviously that never happened. He told me the whole story, how he had noticed that Megan and Lucas were texting more frequently, how when he checked her phone he found conversations that started innocently but quickly became inappropriate, how he eventually discovered they had been seeing each other secretly when Lucas visited the city where they lived, supposedly to see Benjamin. Benjamin said he had confronted both of them. First Megan, who admitted everything through tears, saying she hadn't wanted it to happen but that she had real feelings for Lucas. And then Lucas, who basically told him he was sorry, but that he loved Megan, and that he wasn't going to end what they had just because Benjamin was hurt. Benjamin described his last conversation with Lucas as the most painful of his life. He said Lucas tried to justify himself, saying that technically it wasn't his fault that he had fallen in love, that nobody chooses these things, and that Benjamin should understand that sometimes things just don't work with one person, but they do with another. Benjamin told him not to contact him again, that he no longer had a brother, and that the next time he heard from him would be at one of their parents' funeral if he decided to show up. Hearing Benjamin tell this, hearing the pain in his voice even months later, was devastating. I told him that Catherine and I had made it clear to Lucas that we didn't support this relationship, that we weren't going to attend any wedding, and Benjamin thanked me but also said he didn't expect us to completely cut contact with Lucas because of him, that he understood he was our son too. But Catherine and I had already talked about this, and we told him this wasn't simply choosing a side, it was about principles, about what's right and what's wrong, and that what Lucas had done was fundamentally wrong no matter how he wanted to justify it. A few weeks later, Lucas called us again, this time calmer, saying he had been thinking about our conversation and that he wanted to try again, that Megan and he were going to go ahead with the wedding, and that they really hoped we would reconsider attending. Catherine took the phone and asked him directly if he had talked to Benjamin, if he had tried to repair that relationship in any way, and Lucas admitted he hadn't, that Benjamin had made it clear he didn't want anything to do with him, and that he was respecting those wishes. Catherine told him that then we were also respecting our values, and that our answer was still no. That until we saw some sign of real remorse, of understanding about the severity of what he had done, we weren't going to bless this union. Lucas got frustrated and started saying we were being dramatic, that families go through worse things, and get over them, that Benjamin would eventually meet someone else and move on with his life, and I intervened to tell him that wasn't the point. That the point was, he had violated the most sacred trust that exists between brothers, and that he seemed incapable of understanding that. Lucas hung up telling us we were making a mistake, that someday we would want to be part of his life, and that maybe by then it would be too late, as if we were the ones being unreasonable in all this. My father, the boy's grandfather, is 82 years old, and has always been an important figure in Benjamin and Lucas's lives. He loves them both very much, and has always been present in their lives. He and my mother, who is 79, had established trust funds for both grandchildren years ago, money they were supposed to receive at certain moments in their lives, one of those moments being marriage. When my father found out from us what Lucas had done, the way he had betrayed Benjamin, he got furious in a way I had. Rarely seen, my father is generally a calm man, but this really affected him deeply. He said he wasn't going to allow Lucas to use the trust fund money to finance a wedding based on betrayal and deceit, and he proceeded to contact his lawyer to modify the trust and revoke Lucas's access to those funds. Lucas was counting on that money for the wedding. It was a considerable sum, like $150,000 or something like that, and when he found out my father had revoked his access, he called my parents screaming that it was unfair, that the money was technically his, that they couldn't just take it away because they didn't like his decisions. My father told him very clearly that the money was his to give to whoever he wanted, under whatever conditions he wanted, and that as long as Lucas continued with this farce of a marriage, he wouldn't see a cent of that money. Lucas tried to appeal to my mother, but she completely supported my father. She was also devastated by what Lucas had done. She had been crying since she found out about how he had hurt Benjamin. But my father didn't stop there. He's from a generation that strongly believes in responsibility and consequences, and he decided that the rest of the extended family needed to know the truth about why we weren't supporting this marriage. He sent a message, I think it was a long email or maybe several emails, to aunts, uncles, cousins, basically all the extended family from both sides, explaining in detail what Lucas had done, how he had an affair with his brother's girlfriend, how he had destroyed that relationship and was now trying to marry her like nothing. I don't know exactly what the message said word for word, but I know my father is very articulate when he wants to be, and that he didn't beat around the bush about the severity of the betrayal. The family's response was almost unanimous, like from my wife's side. From mine, distant cousins we hadn't seen in years, everyone started contacting Lucas and Megan, expressing their disapproval, saying they wouldn't attend the wedding, some being more diplomatic than others, but the message was clear. Catherine's sister, for example, sent Lucas a message saying she had known him since he was a child, and that she never thought he would be capable of something like this, that she was deeply disappointed. One of my cousins, who had always been close to Benjamin, wrote Lucas a pretty harsh message telling him he was a disgrace and that he had lost all respect for him. My brother tried to be more measured, but still let Lucas know he couldn't support this decision and that he wouldn't be at the wedding. Lucas and Megan started receiving this avalanche of messages and calls from family members. Basically, the entire family took a position against them. And Lucas started sending furious messages to everyone, saying it was his private life, that what happened between him and Benjamin was nobody else's business, that everyone was being manipulated by my father. But the reality is that the family saw the facts for what they were and made their own decisions. Nobody needed to be manipulated to understand that what Lucas had done was wrong. Benjamin, for his part, had started dating someone new, a girl named Stephanie, who he met at work, and according to what he told us, things were going well. She knew everything that had happened with Megan and Lucas, and had been very understanding and patient with him while he processed all that trauma. He told us Stephanie was completely different from Megan, more mature, more considerate, and that although he was still healing from everything that had happened, he felt that maybe eventually he could trust someone again. Catherine was happy to hear him talk like that, to know he wasn't completely closed off to the idea of having another relationship in the future, although it was also clear that the wounds were still very fresh. Meanwhile, the pressure on Lucas and Megan kept mounting. Megan apparently started having second thoughts about the marriage, not because she felt real remorse for what she had done, but because she couldn't handle the social ostracism they were facing. Lucas called us in an almost hysterical state, like a month before the planned wedding date, saying Megan was considering canceling everything, that she was scared by how the family was treating her, and that we needed to do something to fix the situation. Catherine told him the only way to fix the situation was for him and Megan to acknowledge the severity of what they had done and try to make peace with Benjamin, but Lucas said that was impossible because Benjamin wasn't even answering his calls or messages. I suggested that maybe that was a sign, that maybe he needed to reconsider all this, that getting married to someone under these circumstances wasn't a solid foundation for a marriage, but Lucas got angry, saying I was trying to sabotage his relationship, that everyone was against him unfairly. I told him it wasn't unfair, that actions have consequences and these were the consequences of his decisions, but he didn't want to hear any of that. He hung up, saying he was going to do everything possible to save his relationship with Megan, and that if the family couldn't support them, then they didn't need any of us in their lives. 2 weeks later, we received a call from Lucas saying the wedding was canceled, that Megan couldn't go through with the marriage because the family pressure was too much, because everyone hated her and had made her feel like a pariah, and that it was all our fault, particularly my father's fault for having contacted the entire family. He was crying on the phone, saying we had destroyed his life, that he just wanted to be happy, and that we had taken that away from him. And honestly, I don't know what he expected us to say. Catherine tried to talk to him, but he just kept blaming us, saying that if we had accepted his relationship from the beginning, none of this would have happened, as if we were responsible for his decisions. I told Lucas he needed to come home, that we needed to have a real face-to-face conversation about all this, but he refused, saying he didn't want to see us, that we were just like everyone else, that we had abandoned him when he needed us most. I tried to explain that we hadn't abandoned him, that what happened is that he made decisions that had natural consequences, but he was too wrapped up in his own victimization narrative to listen. He said that Megan and he had broken up too, that she had told him she couldn't be with someone who came with so much family baggage, that his family was never going to accept her, and that she couldn't live like that, which was pretty ironic considering all the family baggage existed because of the decisions they both had made. A few weeks after that, we learned from a cousin that Megan had tried to contact Benjamin, that she had sent him messages apologizing, saying she had made a terrible mistake, that she should never have been with Lucas, that she still had feelings for Benjamin. Benjamin called us to tell us about this. He sounded between incredulous and angry, saying Megan had the nerve to think she could just crawl back after everything that had happened. He asked Stephanie, his new girlfriend, what he should do, and she wisely told him to block Megan on everything, that he didn't owe her anything, that she had made her bed and now had to lie in it. Basically, Benjamin followed her advice and blocked Megan everywhere, didn't respond to any messages, and from what we know, she eventually stopped trying. Lucas, for his part, started blaming us more and more openly for what he called the destruction of his life. He sent occasional messages saying we were the worst parents in the world, that we had chosen Benjamin over him, that we would never forgive ourselves when we realized the mistake we had made. Catherine would cry every time we received one of these messages, because despite everything, he was still our son, and seeing him so lost, so incapable of taking responsibility for his own actions, was heartbreaking. We had one last conversation with Lucas about 3 months ago. We told him he would always be our son, that we loved him, but that we couldn't have him in our lives while he continued blaming us for the consequences of his own decisions, while he showed no real remorse for the pain he had caused his brother. We told him that when he was ready to have an honest conversation about what had happened, about how to repair, even minimally, the relationship with Benjamin, we would be here, but that until then we needed space. Lucas said that was basically cutting him out of our lives, that we were giving him an unfair ultimatum, and we told him it wasn't an ultimatum, it was simply establishing necessary boundaries to protect our own mental health and Benjamin's. Since then, we haven't talked to Lucas. We know from his social media account, which Catherine checks obsessively, although I've told her not to, that he's living in the same city where he was before, that he apparently got a new job, that he goes out with his friends, basically continues with his life as if none of this had happened. Benjamin, on the other hand, is getting better and better. His relationship with Stephanie is getting serious. They moved in together recently, and although there are still days when you can see he carries the weight of the betrayal, overall he's healing and rebuilding his life. He came to visit us last month with Stephanie, and it was nice to see him laugh again, to see him make future plans without that constant shadow of pain. My parents are devastated by this whole situation. My mother sometimes cries thinking about Lucas, wondering where they went wrong in raising him. And my father oscillates between sadness and fury. He maintains his firm position that Lucas won't receive the trust fund money, but I know it deeply pains him to have had to make that decision. The extended family has been incredibly supportive of us and Benjamin, but there's also a collective feeling of loss because Lucas was part of many lives, and now he's simply not present at any family gathering, at any celebration. I guess the hardest thing about all this is that there's no clean ending, no satisfying resolution. Just this new reality where we effectively have only one son because the other made decisions that alienated him from everyone. Catherine and I sometimes lie awake at night wondering what we could have done differently, if we spoiled Lucas, if we were too indulgent with him when he was young, if there were signs we didn't see that he was capable of this kind of betrayal. But the truth is, we raised both sons the same way, with the same values, and Benjamin turned out to be a man of principles, while Lucas turned out to be someone willing to sacrifice his relationship with his brother for a girl. Benjamin told us recently not to blame ourselves, that he had thought a lot about all this, and that in the end, each person is responsible for their own decisions. That Lucas chose to do what he did, despite knowing perfectly well it was wrong, and that no amount of reflection about our parenting was going to change that. He's right, I guess, but it's still hard not to wonder, especially for Catherine, who is still a mother and who, despite everything that happened, still loves Lucas and suffers from the separation. I don't know if someday Lucas is going to wake up and truly understand what he did. If he's going to reach a point where he can take genuine responsibility and try to repair even a fraction of the damage he caused. Part of me hopes so, because it would be good to have both sons in our lives again, but the other part of me, the realistic part that has seen how he's handled all this, doubts very much that's going to happen. For now, we live with this new normal, where family gatherings feel incomplete, where every achievement of Benjamin's comes with a silent reminder that Lucas isn't there to celebrate it, where Catherine and I carry the weight of knowing our family is broken in a way that might never be completely repaired. Last week, Benjamin called us to say that Stephanie and he are considering getting engaged soon, that he wants to make it official before the end of the year. And Catherine cried with happiness for him, but also with sadness because she knew Lucas wouldn't be there, that this moment that should involve both brothers is going to be marked by the absence of one. We told Benjamin we were incredibly happy for him, that Stephanie seemed wonderful, and that he definitely deserved that happiness after everything he had been through. And it's true. He deserves it. But it's also true that every happy moment now comes with this layer of melancholy, because our family is never going to be what it was before. It's never going to be complete in the way we thought it would be.